When Little House on the Prairie first lit up our television screens, the bond between Michael Landon and Karen Grassle felt like something out of a dream. As Charles and Caroline Ingalls, they radiated warmth and love, captivating audiences. With their chemistry and wholesome portrayal of frontier life, their on-screen magic gave millions an idealized escape into the rugged, yet heartwarming world of Walnut Grove. But beyond the smiling faces and tear-jerking storylines, a far different reality unfolded, one that the public never saw. For years, Karen Grassle remained silent about what really went on behind the scenes. But now, in a courageous and deeply personal revelation, she has stepped forward to share her story. And what she endured during those years is both shocking and heartbreaking. Karen Grassle's account reveals an entirely different version of life on set, one marked by mistreatment, emotional exhaustion, and a strained relationship with the very man who helped make the show iconic, Michael Landon. Their working relationship, far from the affectionate partnership shown on screen, was riddled with tension and imbalance. So, what exactly happened on the set of Little House? Landon do that left Grassle feeling invisible and pushed to the brink. As the truth comes to light, we begin to see the hidden side of one of America's most beloved shows, a side they never intended for you to witness, before she became known as the resilient and nurturing ma of the Ingalls family. Karen Grassle had a long journey filled with ambition, talent, and a deep love for performance. Born in 1942 in Northern California, Karen moved with her family to Ventura at the age of 5. Even in childhood, the performing arts called to her. She studied at a local dance academy and began performing in school plays, quickly falling in love with the stage. After graduating from Ventura High School in 1959, she set out to broaden her academic and artistic horizons. Karen's educational path was impressive. She first enrolled at H. Sophie Newcomb Memorial College, a coordinate college of Tulane University, before transferring to the University of California, Berkeley. There, she earned 2 Bachelor of Arts degrees, one in English and the other in dramatic art in 1965. But her dedication didn't stop there. Karen's talent and commitment earned her a Fulbright Fellowship to study at the prestigious London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. It was in London that she honed her craft, preparing herself for a serious career in theater. Upon returning to the United States, Karen dove headfirst into stage work. She spent summers performing at the Stanford Contemporary Workshop and the Colorado Shakespeare Festival, taking on classical roles that showcased her range and skill. Her professional debut was at the Front Street Theater in Memphis, Tennessee, before she eventually made her way to New York City. There she immersed herself in regional and stock theaters, slowly building a solid reputation. Alongside theater, she appeared in PBS productions and acted in 3 network soap operas. In 1968, she made her Broadway debut in The Gingham Dog. Showed that, although short-lived, was pivotal to her career. Grassle also worked as a stand-in for industry legends like Gloria Swanson and Rosemary Murphy in Broadway productions like Butterflies Are Free. In 1972, she appeared with Marino Sullivan and Brandon DeWilde at Denver's Ilitch Theater. Performance marked by tragedy when DeWilde died shortly after the show ended. One of her standout performances was in Cymbeline for Shakespeare in the Park, where she shared the stage with future stars like Christopher Walken, Sam Waterston, and William Devane. Her body of work proved her versatility and depth, but television was still uncharted territory. That changed when Karen Grassle landed an audition for a role that would change her life forever. Caroline Ingalls. Though relatively unknown to TV audiences at the time, she was chosen from a pool of 47 actresses by Michael Landon himself, who felt she had the look and spirit of a pioneer woman. Despite having limited on-camera experience, Grassle's theater background and dramatic training won her the part. Little did she know, the dream job would come with hidden costs. In 1974, Little House on the Prairie premiered, and for the next 9 seasons, Karen's portrayal of Ma made her a beloved figure across America. But while the show became a symbol of family values and perseverance, Karen's real-life experience behind the scenes was far more difficult. After filming the pilot, she briefly appeared on Gunsmoke in a guest role and continued with acting work in projects like Harry's War and Wyatt Earp. She co-wrote and starred in Battered, a powerful NBC TV movie that addressed domestic abuse. Beyond acting, Karen became a passionate advocate for women's rights, lobbying for federal shelter funding and campaigning for the Equal Rights Amendment. Her television work continued with appearances in made-for-TV movies like Cocaine 1, Man's Seduction, Crisis in Midair, and Between the Darkness and the Dawn. She popped up on classic shows like Hotel, The Love Boat, and Murder, she wrote, as well as talk shows hosted by Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas. After Little House ended, she returned to her theater roots, founding the Resource Theater Company in Santa Fe and joining the Actors Theater of Louisville. In the 2000s, she became a fixture in the San Francisco Bay Area theater scene, earning accolades for performances in Cabaret, The Ride Down Mount Morgan, and a national tour of Driving Miss Daisy. Despite her long career, it wasn't until 2021 that Karen Grassle truly opened up about the personal and professional pain she endured. Her memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, revealed a lifetime of challenges, including a strained relationship with Michael Landon and her own struggle with alcoholism. Karen had grown up with an alcoholic father and had kept journals since age 13 to cope with the confusion and sadness of her upbringing. These writings formed the emotional core of her memoir in the book. She recounts how her drinking began during the second season of Little House. During what she thought was a harmless cast luncheon, she had a glass of wine, the only time she drank while working. But afterward, she found herself obsessing over it, rinsing her mouth with water and mouthwash, smoking a cigarette, and feeling deeply uneasy. That moment, though small on the surface, marked the beginning of a personal battle she would fight. For years, meanwhile, tensions with Landon grew. Karen had requested a raise before season 2, believing she deserved better compensation for her work. But Landon denied her request, reportedly dismissing her character as less popular than the others and implying her value was less than that of the younger cast. From then on, she said, he began cutting her out of important storylines, making her feel insignificant. Her once exciting dream role had become a source of anxiety and heartbreak. The working conditions were no better. Female cast members wore heavy, historically accurate costumes, tight layers, long-sleeve dresses, and petticoats in California's sweltering heat. The show was filmed in Simi Valley, where temperatures often topped 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Allison Arngrim, who played the villainous Nellie Oleson, remembered nearly fainting from heat exhaustion on her first day. She was revived by a medic and returned to finish the scene, just one of many examples of the physical toll the show took. Arngrim's hair, originally curled nightly for her role, eventually required a wig one, held in place with painful metal, combs and bobby pins. She endured scalp cuts and had her wounds cleaned with astringent before filming resumed. Even hairstyling became an ordeal. Michael Landon wore many hats: executive producer, director, and writer. He often recycled scripts from his Bonanza days, with entire plot lines reappearing almost verbatim on Little House. For instance, a 1970 Bonanza episode titled A Matter of Circumstance bore striking resemblance to Little House's A Matter of Faith. Both involved characters attempting to amputate their limbs while alone, only to faint before completing the act. Landon reused not just dialogue, but even camera angles and emotional beats. Despite these shortcuts and the hardships faced by the cast, the show thrived. However, not everyone agreed with the creative direction. Ed Friendly, the show's co-creator, later expressed frustration that the production had strayed too far from Laura Ingalls Wilder's original books. He believed the Ingalls family was portrayed as too affluent, even joked that the show should have been called How Affluent Is My Prairie. Criticizing choices like having the children, or shoes, or upgrading the family's home from a sod house to a frame house for visual appeal, Friendly left the show before it aired. Yet Little House on the Prairie became a cultural touchstone. Millions tuned in for the love, hardships, and values it represented. But for Karen Grassle, the journey was fraught with emotional damage. unacknowledged contributions, and personal demons that lingered long after the camera stopped rolling. Her experience reveals the cost physical, emotional, and professional of making TV magic. What the audience saw was a tale of hope and resilience. What they didn't see was the silent suffering of the woman who brought Ma to life. About a week after a difficult period in her life, Karen Grassle attended a feminist conference where she was scheduled to deliver a speech. Nervous and unsure of herself, she drank a little too much before stepping on stage. The speech dragged on awkwardly, and by the end, she felt humiliated and defeated. Seeking solace, she visited an old friend someone recently introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. That friend didn't sugarcoat anything. They told Karen directly she had a problem, and for the first time, Karen couldn't deny it. Once back home, she tried to quit drinking, but her efforts failed. She found herself trapped in a cycle, one more drunken night. Another ruined conversation, followed by another flood of tears. But then something inside her shifted. Final, fierce decision emerged. She would never drink again. With determination, she sought help and committed herself to sobriety. A few months into her recovery, her father, her earliest example of addiction, died from alcoholism. She didn't need a further wake-up call. She already understood how deadly the disease was. That loss only solidified her resolve to live sober, clear-eyed, and reclaim the voice she had nearly lost. But as Karen Grassle grew stronger in her recovery, she found herself facing a new, quieter kind of struggle, one not tied to addiction, but to her career. The battle didn't come from a bottle this time. It came from the set of Little House on the Prairie. When Karen first stepped onto the set of the pilot episode, she was entering unknown territory. She had a strong background in theater, but television was unfamiliar. Michael Landon welcomed her warmly. In her own words, he was very kind and sensitive in those early days. He directed her gently, supported her process, and allowed her space to grow. At first, it seemed like the beginning of a beautiful collaboration, but the magic quickly faded. Nearly 4 decades after the show ended, Grassle broke her silence and revealed what had really been going on behind the scenes. While audiences saw the loving couple Charles and Caroline Ingalls, the relationship off-screen between her and Landon was anything but harmonious. In her memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, Grassle described a toxic workplace environment that most fans could never have imagined. She recalled Landon's inappropriate and often vulgar jokes shared openly in front of the cast and crew. He made fun of her appearance, mocked her facial expressions, and belittled her request for fair pay by suggesting she didn't deserve more money than the child actors. Despite the show's rising success after its 1974 premiere, Grassle was earning between $2,000 and $4,000 a week. When she asked for a raise before the second season, Landon dismissed her request, saying she wasn't as popular as she thought she was and didn't deserve more. Grassle felt deeply insulted. She wasn't asking for special treatment, just fair compensation as a co-star on a hit show. After that confrontation, she noticed a shift. Her role began shrinking. Scenes were cut. Landon became distant and cold. When he wasn't ignoring her, he was mocking her behind her back in front of crew members, often taking jabs at her appearance. Grassle felt powerless. She wanted to speak up, but she froze. Like many women in the 1970s entertainment industry, she had been conditioned to endure this kind of treatment. So she kept her head down, acted professionally, and played the part of the good girl, quietly hoping that things would improve. But they didn't. Landon's behavior escalated. His language on set turned increasingly vulgar. Grassle remembered him using explicit slurs and making obscene jokes about women. The worst moments, she explained, came during their private bedroom. Scenes intimate, tender moments adored by fans. She once cherished filming these heartfelt exchanges, but soon they became unbearable. Landon would make crude remarks while lying next to her in bed on set, surrounded by male crew members under intense studio lights. Grassle described the setting as claustrophobic and demeaning. She felt trapped with no way to escape. Despite the pain, time helped to mend some wounds. In the years after the show ended, Grassle and Landon were able to reconcile to some extent. She expressed gratitude that they reached a more positive understanding before Landon's death in 1991. Yet, while many of his former co-stars continued to praise him as a warm and generous man, Grassle's revelations painted a far more complex portrait. And she wasn't alone in her criticism. Melissa Sue Anderson, who played Mary Ingalls, also opened up in her memoir, The Way I See It. She acknowledged Landon's strengths, including being a devoted father, but also noted his flaws. She described him as controlling and revealed how he would single out people on set, teasing them harshly and publicly. She also shared a lesser-known detail about the show's finale, when Landon ordered the entire set of Walnut Grove to be blown up. According to her, this wasn't just for dramatic effect. It was revenge. Landon wanted to ensure no one else could use the sets after the series ended. These behind-the-scenes accounts cast a very different light on the beloved family drama. The show may have radiated warmth and traditional values on screen, but backstage, it was marked by power struggles, quiet suffering, and a culture that often silenced those who were mistreated. Michael Landon's creative brilliance came at a cost. Karen Grassle wasn't the only one who revealed this side of Landon. Allison Arngrim, who played the infamous Nellie Oleson, also spoke openly about the environment on set. Her perspective added depth to Grassle's claims. At an event honoring Bob Hope and U.S. veterans, Arngrim recalled that Landon was far from the wholesome character he portrayed. She said he drank heavily, smoked constantly, told crude jokes, and created a workplace that mirrored the macho, whiskey-fueled culture seen in shows like Mad Men, according to her. The set often felt like an old boys' club where inappropriate humor wasn't just accepted, it was encouraged. She remembered Landon driving a Ferrari, chain-smoking, and operating on minimal sleep, driven by what she called a manic creative energy. Although she personally enjoyed his wild nature and found him fascinating as a teenager, she acknowledged that not everyone could handle his intensity. The makeup room, she noted, became a kind of neutral zone where cast members regrouped and reset before facing the chaos of the set again. Arngrim later wrote her own memoir, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, where she shared that although she never experienced Landon's cruelty firsthand, she witnessed enough to validate the broader concerns. Landon was a complicated man, charismatic, brilliant, and eccentric, but also domineering and unpredictable. He could make people laugh one moment and make them feel small the next. As time passed, more cast members shared their stories, and a clearer picture began to emerge. Michael Landon's legacy, while cherished by many, is now recognized as layered and sometimes painful. Grassle's courage to speak out helped peel back the polished image of a perfect prairie father and reveal the flawed human behind the scenes. Before he became the beloved Charles Ingalls, Landon had already built a strong following as Little Joe on Bonanza. Both roles became television landmarks, celebrated for their portrayal of family and frontier grit. But just like Little House, the behind-the-scenes reality of Bonanza was far from ideal. Landon's reputation for being difficult actually started on the Ponderosa. Though his charm lit up the screen, behind the camera, he clashed with directors and colleagues. William Claxton, a Bonanza director, once called him a brat in a televised interview. Claxton remembered Landon as passionate but combative in his early years. Still, over time, Landon changed. His energy shifted from defiance to creative obsession. He became fascinated with all aspects of TV production, writing, directing, producing, and he eventually took over those roles. This relentless drive followed him into Little House. His perfectionism, while producing unforgettable television, sometimes made him overbearing. He was both inspiring and intimidating. His story is a study in contrasts, a man who could move audiences to tears, but also brought tears to his colleagues. His genius was undeniable, but so were the wounds he left behind. In the end, both Karen Grassle and Little House fans are left with a complicated truth. The show they loved was built on talent, heart, and quiet sacrifices made by those who had no choice but to endure. And as those voices grow louder decades later, the story of Little House on the Prairie becomes fuller, richer, and more honest than ever before.